When you watch an Olympic sprint kayaker, you're seeing this incredible blend of raw power and, well, sheer endurance. It really is poetry in motion. But underneath all that technique is a physiological engine that's being pushed to the absolute ragged edge of human performance. So today, we're going to pop the hood on that engine and see what really makes these athletes tick. Let's get into it. We're going to dig into how these athletes are built, from their muscles and bones all the way down to the tiny molecules that fuel every single paddle stroke. Because they are, in every possible sense, highly specialized athletic machines. They've been forged by years of incredibly specific, grueling training to do one thing and one thing only: make a boat go unbelievably fast. And here's where it gets really, really interesting. Because that same athlete, that same engine, has to show up and compete in 3 totally different races: the 200, the 500, and the 1,000-meter events. And these races have wildly different demands. We're talking a 40-second all-out blast, a brutal 3.5-minute test of endurance, and then this punishing race that sits right in the middle. So the big question is, how on earth does one body do it all? All right, to understand the kayaker, we first have to understand their power sources. And it's not as simple as just one single engine. Nope. In reality, every athlete has 2 distinct but interconnected metabolic engines working under the hood. Okay, so all human movement, every single muscle twitch, from blinking to an explosive paddle stroke, is powered by just one molecule, adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. You can think of it as the high-octane gasoline for our cells. Now, the problem is, we only have a tiny amount of it stored in our muscles at any given time, so our body has to be a master at constantly and rapidly making more. And it does this using 2 very different systems. So let's just call them the marathon engine and the rocket booster. Your aerobic system, that's the marathon engine. It's super efficient, it uses oxygen to slowly burn fuel, and it can go for a long time. Then you've got your anaerobic system, the rocket booster. This is all about immediate, explosive power. It doesn't need oxygen, but it burns out incredibly fast. Every single race is a carefully managed blend of these 2 engines. So let's see how that blend plays out in our first event. We're going to start with the longest race, the 1,000-meter. This one is the ultimate test of that efficient, long-burn marathon engine. It's a race of attrition, of pacing, and just pure aerobic horsepower. And what's just mind-boggling here is how dominant one system is. Over a race that lasts about 3.5 minutes, a staggering 85% of the energy comes from that aerobic marathon engine. Now, that little 15% from the anaerobic rocket booster, it's absolutely crucial for the start and that final kick to the finish line. But this race is won or lost on the raw strength of that marathon engine. So how do we actually measure the size of that engine? Well, this number is the key. It's called the VO2 max, and it basically represents the maximum rate an athlete's body can suck in and use oxygen. For an elite male kayaker to hit nearly 70 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of their body weight per minute, that is an absolutely world-class aerobic engine. I mean, especially for a sport that's so dominated by the upper body. Just incredible. Okay, now let's just slam the gears and look at the polar opposite, the 200-meter sprint. Forget endurance. This is a 40-second explosion of pure power. It's a completely different physiological puzzle that relies almost entirely on that other engine, the rocket booster. Just look at this shift. It's night and day. Here, the anaerobic systems provide a massive 70% of the total energy. And we can even break that down. The first part, the alactic system, that gives you the instant, lightning-fast power for the first few seconds right off the starting blocks. Then the lactic system kicks in to sustain that crazy power output for the rest of the sprint. The aerobic engine, it's just kind of hanging on in the background, trying to stop a total power meltdown at the very end. Now, when you produce that much anaerobic power, you create a lot of metabolic byproducts, mainly something called lactate. This number here represents the peak blood lactate concentration. And to put it simply, this is a measure of pure, unadulterated grit. Reaching levels as high as 17.5 millimoles per liter, that signifies an unbelievable ability to tolerate the severe metabolic stress and, frankly, the pain that comes with an all-out sprint like this. Okay, so we've seen the pure endurance race and the pure power race, but what happens when you smash them together? Well, you get the 500-meter event. And this isn't some nice, neat blend. It is a battle, a brutal internal tug-of-war between the 2 engines.
This quote just nails it. The 500-meter truly is the ultimate test of the complete athlete. It sits at this physiological crossroads where both the aerobic and the anaerobic systems are pushed to their absolute breaking limits. To win here, you have to have a world-class marathon engine and a world-class rocket booster. No exceptions. And the energy contribution really reflects this conflict. The aerobic system is providing about 2/3 of the power, with the anaerobic system kicking in the other third. It's funny, in the scientific literature, these exact percentages are actually pretty hotly debated, which I think perfectly captures the race's nature as this true bioenergetic battleground. So here's the crucial part. It's all about how the race unfolds. An athlete basically performs a 200-meter sprint for the first 40 seconds, completely flooding their system with lactate. But then, with a rocket booster sputtering and running on fumes, they have to turn around and ask their marathon engine to take over and sustain a near maximal pace for another full minute. It is physiologically punishing in a way the other two races just aren't. So far, we've only talked about the engines, but a powerful engine is pretty useless without the right chassis to actually deliver that power to the water. The athlete's physical structure, their body itself, is just as critical to their success. Right across the sport, you see this really consistent body type, what scientists call a morphological signature. It's defined by a super powerful muscular upper body. We're talking broad shoulders, big arms, big chest, combined with a very, very lean physique. And this isn't about looking good. This is a purely functional adaptation to the demands of the sport. And this data, which comes from these highly precise body composition scans called DEXA scans, it shows us how that chassis gets built over a career. As athletes move from the under-23 ranks up to the senior elite level, we see some really fascinating changes. Take a look at the men. They get way heavier, adding over 10 kilos of mass. But then for the women, their total body mass barely changes at all, but their composition is completely transformed. And this reveals two very different developmental pathways. For men, it's something called hypertrophic development. They just get bigger, building more and more power-producing muscle onto their frame. For women, it's different. It's compositional refinement. They don't get much bigger. They get more efficient by repartitioning their mass, swapping out fat for powerful lean tissue. It's a really fundamental difference in how male and female athletes optimize their chassis for elite performance. And that brings us to the final critical piece of this whole puzzle: efficiency, or what scientists call locomotion economy. You can have the biggest engine and the strongest chassis in the world, but if your technique is inefficient, you're just spinning your wheels and wasting energy. This is all about getting the absolute most speed out of every single unit of fuel you burn. And this just perfectly illustrates the central compromise of kayaking. A bigger, more muscular athlete, they can generate more absolute power. Simple as that. But that extra mass makes the kayak sit deeper in the water, which creates more hydrodynamic drag. So performance is always a trade-off. The benefit you get from the extra power has to outweigh the penalty you pay for the extra drag. Which leaves us with one final big question. When you look at the complete picture, the marathon engine, the rocket booster, the specialized chassis, and that constant nagging battle against drag, what really defines the ultimate kayaker? Is it the raw size of their physiological engine, or is it the ruthless efficiency of the machine that turns that power into blistering speed? Well, the answer, of course, is both. And it's in that perfect, delicate, and brutal balance where champions are truly made.